Imagine someone offers you to take part in an experiment, tasting a new drug, with completely unpredictable side effects. Chances are, if you had something to lose, you would probably say no to something that risky. Or maybe you'd agree, but only if nobody told you that this drug might come with some serious side effects. And by serious, I don't mean a headache or feeling sleepy. I mean things like losing an arm or a leg, losing your sight, your hearing, or becoming a barely functioning shadow of yourself. Only a few centuries ago, humanity had no idea what kind of risks it was facing. In the 19th and 20th centuries, science made tremendous progress. Of course, some discoveries were imperfect and needed refinement, like the internal combustion engine or early theories in the field of electricity. But while mistakes in physics or math weren't all that dangerous, medical discoveries, especially new treatments for physical and mental illnesses, had very real and deadly consequences. Today we are diving into 7 so-called medical breakthroughs that, rather than saving lives, led to tragedy for thousands. You'll see how carelessness and greed from drug companies left entire generations harmed, and how blind trust in so-called miracle cures led to the tragic deaths of some of history's most brilliant minds. These were supposed to be life-saving drugs, but they only sped up people's deaths. Make sure to watch this video till the end because some of these treatments are still used today, and a lot of people still believe in them. You might be one of them. In the early 20th century, radioactive substances seemed like a true miracle. The discovery of Henry Becquerel and further research by Marie Curie created a real sensation in the scientific world. Radioactive elements were perceived as a means to treat any diseases. They were added to medicines, cosmetics, and even food products, claiming to extend life and cure ailments. However, it soon became evident that these miraculous drugs turned into real tragedies. The Radithor drink enriched with radium became extremely popular. People consumed it in hopes of healing, but soon began reporting serious consequences. Eben Byers, one of the consumers of the Radithor, lost his health and life after prolonged use of this drink. Unfortunately, radioactive substances not only caused diseases, but also became the cause of an epidemic of dependence on miracle cures. It was until the 1930s when the public began to realize the dangers associated with radioactive products. However, many had already fallen victims to this scientific trick. There are numerous stories of people suffering from the consequences of radiation exposure. For example, the radium girls who worked in factories painting clock faces were exposed to radiation and suffered from the terrible diseases. By the 1830s, these cases began to attract public and governmental attention, ultimately leading to stricter regulation in the pharmaceutical industry. Today we know that radioactive substances can cause cancer and other serious diseases. These tragic cases emphasize the importance of critical approach in new discoveries, and not succumbing to the temptation of miraculous solutions. Lobotomy, introduced in 1935, also became a notorious method for treating mental illnesses. Initially, this surgery appeared to be breakthrough. It promised to free patients from distressing disorders. However, it soon became clear that lobotomy didn't heal but destroyed personality. The procedure involved the surgical destruction of the frontal lobes of the brain. Walter Friedman, one of the main advocates of the method, performed operation in public, assuring that it was safe. Interesting move. However, many patients who underwent lobotomy lost not only their ailments, but also their identities. Some even became disabled. By the 1960s, increasingly convincing evidences of these dangers emerged, and many doctors started to reject this method. Lobotomy became a symbol of how easily medical science can go astray, ignoring human dignity and rights. One of the most famous cases is that of the patient named Kathy, who after lobotomy lost her ability to speak and move immediately. She became dependent on care and her tragedy became a call to recognize the thoughtlessness surrounding the application of lobotomy. Today, lobotomy is seen as one of the saddest and cruelest experiments in medical history. Electroconvulsive therapy, or ACT, emerged in the 1930s as a method for treating severe mental illnesses. This procedure involved passing an electric current through the brain, which induced seizures. Initially, the results seemed promising. However, serious side effects began to manifest soon after, such as memory loss or cognitive impairments. Doctors used ACT not only for severe cases, but also as a corrective measure for patients with mild mental health issues. This often led to horrific consequences. Many patients were left disabled, and some even died. Criticism of the method grew, and by the 1970s, ACT began to rise, increasing doubts about its application. Some patient stories involving ACT are shocking. For example, a woman named Laura, who underwent the treatment, lost all her memories of her life, including her name and family. Her tragedy became a symbol of the misfortunes associated with the use of ACT. Today, although ACT is still used, it has been significantly modified and regulated. Tobacco, considered a healing agent, became popular in the 16th century. Doctors recommended it for treating various ailments, from headaches to stress. Initially, tobacco was indeed used as a medical remedy. Tinctures and smoking were viewed as ways to strengthen health. However, it soon became clear that tobacco caused serious diseases, including lung cancer, heart disease, and chronic obstructive pulmonary disease. By the 1960s, studies established a clear link between smoking and disease. In the 1964, the United States Department of Health released a report that marked a turning point. This report confirmed that smoking causes cancer, and from that point, a serious public health campaign began. Despite the scientific evidence, tobacco companies continued to aggressively promote their products, using various disinformation tactics. They claimed that scientific research was inconclusive. This strategy allowed millions of people to continue smoking, ignoring the facts and warnings. By the 21st century, tobacco became the cause of the global epidemic of diseases. According to the World Health Organization, tobacco kills 8 million people annually, including those exposed to secondhand smoke. This became a significant public health catastrophe. The situation began to change only with the introduction of strict laws on tobacco advertising, increased taxes on tobacco, and bans on smoking in public places. The anti-smoking campaign that began in the 1960s initiated changes in public perception of tobacco and its health effects. Opioids, initially prescribed for pain relief, have become the cause of the global opioid epidemic. In the 19th century, morphine was widely used as an effective analgesic. However, it soon became apparent to doctors that it caused strong addiction. From the early 20th century, as pharmaceutical companies began actively promoting new drugs like oxycodone, doctors started prescribing opioids not only for acute pain, but also for chronic pain syndromes. Advertising campaigns claimed that opioids were safe and didn't cause addiction, leading to a sharp increase in their prescription. However, it soon became clear that this was nothing more than a misconception. As the consumption of opioids rose, their horrific side effects began to manifest: addiction, overdoses, and fatalities. By 2010, the number of deaths from opioid overdoses in the United States surpassed the number of homicides. The opioid dependency epidemic spread beyond the United States to other countries. The situation became catastrophic. Millions of people became dependent on opioids, and many turned to street drugs like heroin. Medications that were once considered a salvation turned into a curse, destroying lives and families. In response to the escalating crisis, public health began to take action. Governments started regulating the sale of opioids, tightening control over their prescription, and launching addiction treatment programs. However, the fight against the epidemic was long and complex, and it's not finished yet. Thalidomide, presented as a safe remedy for insomnia and nausea, turned into a real catastrophe. This drug was introduced in 1950s and quickly gained popularity. It was marked as a sedative for pregnant women, but alarming reports about serious side effects soon began to emerge. Thousands of children were born with abnormalities, and this tragedy forced the world to pay attention to the importance of thorough drug testing. An estimated 10 to 20,000 newborns were harmed by the effects of thalidomide. Stories of mothers who took the drug in hopes of alleviating their suffering, only to receive children with severe disabilities, spread worldwide and became a symbol of the pharmaceutical industry's ruthless approach to testing. One of the most common and just as useless methods of treatment and disease prevention is bloodletting. It's a part of what is often called traditional Eastern medicine. Bloodletting, along with drinking camel urine, is believed by some Muslims to be a miracle cure for almost any illnesses. But is that really true? Bloodletting is a treatment method that originated in ancient times. Its roots can be traced back to ancient medicine, when doctors believed that a person's health depended on the balance of fluids in the body. It was thought that illnesses resulted from an excess or deficiency of one of the fluids in the body: blood, yellow or black bile, and phlegm. In ancient Egypt, Greece, and Rome, bloodletting was used as a universal treatment method. Doctors, following the techniques of Hippocrates and Galen, would draw blood to purify the body. This practice continued even in the Middle Ages, when doctors applied bloodletting to treat everything from colds to the plague. The problem was that bloodletting, in reality, caused harm. Doctors, unaware of the consequences, depleted their patients, weakening their health. One of the most striking examples is George Washington. In December 1799, he fell ill with a throat infection, and doctors decided to apply bloodletting. As a result, he lost almost half of his blood and soon passed away. By the early 19th century, criticism of bloodletting began to grow. Many doctors started to realize that this method was not only ineffective, but also dangerous. However, by that time, many people had already lost their lives due to this practice. Today, bloodletting is regarded as a relic of the past, a reminder of how easily one can fall into the trap of traditions and established methods.